You know, I haven't covered an overrated games list in quite a while. Lucky for me, a fellow named Sin Stubborn has presented me the opportunity to do such a thing with his list of overrated NES games.
Let me tell you that 90% of people keep on mentioning about this overrated NES games in any retro gaming community.
Well, I have to be honest with you, I've never heard anybody talk about either Halloween on NES or Wanted Halloween 5 on NES. Also, they must really be talking about Punch-Out given it's present twice in the picture you show. Actually, funnily enough, Punch-Out is his number 10 entry on this list. So, let's see what he has to say about that.
They call it a nightmare, a masterpiece. I call it a sadistic nightmare.
So they call it a nightmare and you totally agree with them. Anyway, I'm going to discuss one of the bigger issues I have with this video. Watch this clip, and I mean watch it. Actually look at the footage he's putting on screen while he talks, and just see if you notice something.
Every opponent is a memorization machine, a choreographed dance of pain waiting to punish the slightest mistake. Dodging blows is like a threading a needle blindfolded while riding a bucking bronco. And don't even get me started on Tyson himself. One missed counter and it's sliced out faster than you can say Nintendo.
Despite him talking about how difficult he finds the game, the footage shows him playing it incredibly well. And this is far from the only example in the video. Fuck, it's far from the only example in the segment. Watch this.
Maybe I just suck. Maybe everyone else mastered the art of pixel-perfect dodging and lightning-fast counters.
It seems like you have as well, given you managed to dodge him that many times in a row without any mistakes. Side note, it's also just weird you chose the Macho Man fight as your footage, given the boss right before this, Mr. Sandman, is notorious for being much more difficult, at least if designing for his videos on Punch-Out are any indication.
However, he's not especially harder than Mr. Sandman.
Bogus.
While his macho spin punch can repeat with up to 8 reps and will knock you down instantly, it's got a far slower wind-up than the Dreamland Express. And this showboat is far more likely to get smacked with a star uppercut than the ever-serious Sandman. Really, the toughest thing about Super Macho Man are the nerves the player brings into the ring with them. If you lose, you might have to fight Sandman again, or even retire if you've already dropped 2 matches, needing to go through the World Circuit Gauntlet again in order to even match gloves with Macho Man a second time.
Stay down!
The champ's a competent boxer, but in practice he's just a more well-rounded Popinski with a more orthodox stance. After coming so far, just inches away from being champion of the world, what makes the final boxer intimidating isn't what's to come, but what's behind you.
Look at this part where he's complaining about the difficulty in Ninja Gaiden.
Let's talk about the difficulty. This game isn't hard, it's sadistic. Enemies appear out of the thin air. Projectiles home at like a heat-seeking missiles, and a one wrong jump means a bottomless pit and a cheap death.
Notice how none of that happened in any of the footage that he showed. And this trend continues, make no mistake.
Don't even get me started on the knockback. Get hit and you fly back to the 10 feet, landing right in the path of another enemy.
Okay, that time there was actually knockback in your footage, so point there. However, you didn't fall back into another enemy or a bottomless pit, you just, well, got knocked back slightly. And by the way, here's the guy just saying something wrong.
Then there is a power-ups, hidden, limited, and requiring a separate meter to use. What were they thinking, man?
Neither of the 2 meters on screen have anything to do with your special weapons. That has an ammo count, not a meter. Also, tons of great games have exactly that system. Fuck, the way Ninja Gaiden handles weapons is essentially the same as how the Castlevania games, or at least Castlevania 1 and 3 did. And although you did put Castlevania 3 on this list, that wasn't one of the complaints you made. So why are you complaining about it in Ninja Gaiden but not in Castlevania 3?
The level design, more like a troll's idea of fun. Fake walls, disappearing platforms, and bottomless pits disguised as a floor. all waiting to send you a kerning back to the last checkpoint.
Where the fuck are there any of those things in Ninja Gaiden? Seriously, I've played through the entire game. I cannot think of a single example of any of them happening. Oh, and for those curious about his Castlevania 3 segment,
One wrong move and it's back to the beginning. But hey, who has time for checkpoints in 1989, right?
you do have checkpoints in Castlevania 3, though. That number next to the number that tells you what stage you're on specifically exists to tell you what section of the level you're currently in, and if you die, assuming you aren't gaming over, you're going to start at the beginning of said section as opposed to the beginning of the level. Yeah, there are a number of times in this video where I honestly wonder if he's even familiar with the games he's talking about. Here are some more examples.
Then there is a level design, confusing labyrinths, check, unfamiliar enemy placement, you bet, hidden bottomless pits disguised as a safe ground, absolutely.
What bottomless pits in Ninja Turtles on the NES are you talking about? This is a game I've, again, played all the way through, and I cannot think of a single example of what you even could be referencing.
And the difficulty? Forget about it. This game throws enemies at you like a food soldiers after a free pizza coupon. Lives vanish faster than Shredder's dignity.
You don't have lives in Ninja Turtles on the NES. When one of the turtles runs out of health, they are captured, but that's not really the same as a traditional life system, primarily because most of the time in video games, what life you're on doesn't determine, for example, the range of your weapon. Meanwhile, here, all of the turtles have different stats, and with that, different attack powers and weapon ranges. You even complain about how bad Raphael's weapon is in this segment.
And don't even get me started on Raphael. Who designed this character this useless? His side doesn't have a range of a toddler's reach anyway.
And by the way, to answer your question, it was more than likely an attempt at balancing the turtles, given Raph's weapon is also one of the stronger ones. Mind you, I personally don't think it was done particularly well, given Donatello's weapon is also incredibly strong, and even ignoring that fact, Raph's weapon is so short range that you're probably not going to hit anything with it anyway. But there was still a reason for it. And you wondering why it's being done as if there's absolutely no logical reason for why this would happen is just incorrect on your part.
Whatever the reason, the original TMNT on the NES is a relic best left to the past. And there are far better brawlers out there that won't leave you wanting to throw your controller through your TV.
Well, yeah, I'd imagine there are a lot of better brawlers than the platformer that isn't a fucking brawler.
And don't even get me started on the pits of the instant death disguised as every other body of water in the game.
You see, this point just confuses me. The game isn't disguising instant death pits as bodies of water, because in this game, those two things are completely synonymous. This isn't a case like the aforementioned Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the NES, or say Bubsy 3D, where there are levels where you can swim and levels where you can't. There's nowhere in the game you can swim, so why would you assume you could jump into any body of water? Anyway, here's some more miscellaneous stuff I would like to mention.
People rave about this game. They brag about beating Tyson. What dark magic did they use? Did they even make a deal with the devil himself?
I mean, if you want an actual answer to that question, there are videos on YouTube explaining how to beat the game. Designing 4 has an entire 4-part series on the game, which goes over every boss fight in detail and explains not just how you're supposed to beat them, but also how every fight is designed like a puzzle for the player to figure out. For something even older, you can watch Aqualung's review/walkthrough of the game, where he similarly goes fight by fight and explains how to win every one of them.
Everyone raves about Castlevania 3, but they have actually played it? It's like they take everything frustrating about the NES games and crank it up to 11.
I just want to point out how here he says that people must not have really played the game because otherwise they'd realize it's so difficult only for him to say a few minutes later,
So why do people like this torture fest? Maybe they enjoy feeling the accomplishment after finally conquering its nightmarish difficulty.
of course, that's not the only reason he thinks people might like this game.
Maybe nostalgia clouds their memories.
Yeah, that's another issue with the video. He commonly repeats the point that people probably only like this game because of nostalgia.
So why do people like this game? Maybe it's a nostalgia. So why in the name of the almighty pizza do people hold this game in such a high regard? Probably nostalgia glasses thicker than Krang's dome. Maybe childhood memories gloss over the flaws. So why do people fawn over this thing? Maybe it's nostalgia. It's a frustrating relic held up on a pedestal by rose-tinted glasses. So why does everyone keeps praising this fossil? Nostalgia goggles, that's why. People look back with the rose-tinted glasses forgetting the frustration, the clunky controls, and relentless monotony. They remember it as a pinnacle of gaming because it was all they had back then. Nostalgia can be a powerful drug, but for the newcomers, Battletoads more be like a rage-inducing than rewarding game though. But through the modern lens, it can feel rough around the edges. While its influence is undeniable, nostalgia can cloud our judgment. So there you have it, folks. Super Mario Bros. 3, a game propped by its nostalgia and a rose-tinted glasses. It's a time we take off the rose-tinted glasses and see this game for what it truly is, a frustrating, outdated mess.
And what's especially jarring is several of the games aren't really well liked in the first place. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are people who enjoy these games because of nostalgia and for no other reason. However, as younger players entering the retro game scene become more and more common, those people are becoming an ever-increasing minority, as seen by the fact that a couple of the games you listed had already undergone very significant critical reevaluation years ago. Let's just take Ninja Turtles on NES as an example. Quite possibly the most famous video about the game on the entire internet is the Angry Video Game Nerd's first review of it from all the way back in 2006. You know, the review that began like this.
The original Ninja Turtles is one of the most annoying games I've ever played. You first play it and think, well, this can't be too bad. The control's decent, it's fun killing things, the sound effects are cool. You may even think I'm trying to compare it to the sequels, which are far superior. 2-player, arcade action, beat up a bunch of foot soldiers, good stuff. But this first one is garbage. And you may be like, come on, it's the first of its kind, be easy on it. But no, it sucks. It sucks ass from a straw. And you want to know why? Well, where do I begin?
Before going on to criticize the game for its difficult jumps,
you know what I hate? The fucking jumps in the sewer. If your accuracy is slightly off, you're going down. So you really gotta take your time and watch what's coming up. Oh, you son of a fuck.
Bizarre pizza placement.
And look at this shit right here. These spike walls come at you like an Indiana Jones booby trap. And some game designer who's laughing their ass off just decided to put a pizza down there. Okay, well, what's the point? I mean, are you going to be suicidal enough to go and try to get that pizza? I mean, who's going to do that? It's impossible. What a joke.
And unfair enemy locations.
Now look at that. Now, how the hell am I supposed to get up there? That's impossible. And who is that guy with the chainsaw anyway? Remember him from Ninja Turtles? I sure don't. The only way I can get up there is with Donatello, the turtle with the longest weapon.
Put together with the fact that it has essentially nothing to do with the show it's supposed to be based off of.
So here's a pop quiz. Who are the target audience for this game? Kids. Kids who were fans of Ninja Turtles. Now, you think they would have actually have put more Ninja Turtle characters in the game? Like Baxter Stockman, the Rat King, Krang. I mean, it's not like Krang was like a minor character that came in the 5th season of the show. Krang was right there from the beginning. So, like, there was no excuse. There was no excuse not to have him there. I mean, instead, make way for the missile balloons, flying robot head, those little butterfly things, Mr. Fireman. And Why don't you hear the Ninja Turtles theme song anywhere in the game? What a piece of shit.
And by the way,
Don't forget the infamous dam level, a rage-inducing slog that will make you question your sanity.
the nerd sure as fuck didn't. Here's what he had to say about that level.
So you have to swim around and deactivate all these bombs. And there's so many things out there to kill you, and you have a time limit, so naturally you're rushing to make it through as fast as you can. And all these electric plants hurt you, so you need a lot of patience. But how could you have patience when you're in a fucking hurry? Fuck!
And this is far from the only example, by the way. When it comes to Legend of Zelda, I immediately recognize some of the criticisms you had of it as being nearly identical to the ones some call me Johnny had in his review from over a decade ago. Seriously, watch these clips back to back.
The vast open world, groundbreaking in the 1986, can now feel empty. Lacking clear direction, exploration becomes aimless in wandering. Cryptic clues and hidden secrets, while charming then, can be frustrating now.
Ladies and gentlemen, this game is something I like to call a guide game. A game I think you cannot possibly enjoy without some sort of outside assistance. When A Legend of Zelda was first released, it came with a detailed manual that offered you tons of tips and tricks that can make your journey a little more comfortable. The game itself even tells you to look up the manual for details. Without a guide, you're going to spend about 70% of your total game time absolutely confused with no idea where the hell to go. I consider it to be as bad as Simon's Quest in that regard. In addition to Hyrule not really containing any memorable set pieces, the game's map is totally worthless. Yes, that gray blank box on the top left side of the screen is your map of Hyrule.
Combat is repetitive, enemies offer little variety, and the clunky controls can lead to the cheap hits.
Link is a tank when it comes to sword combat. He can't move and swing a sword at the same time, so you have to constantly pause to stab something. As such, it's very possible to lose a shitload of health just by accidentally running into these guys.
Perhaps the iconic franchise named Cloud's Judgment.
Even ignoring the fact that I already disagree with the notion that what's being said here applies to this game, if this really were true, wouldn't you expect other parts of this franchise to be looked at through the same lens? Where's the masses of people defending, say, the third movie? Or the next mutation? Just to give two examples.
Then there is a length. You can beat this game in an afternoon tops. Where's the replay value? Where's the sense of progression?
But that's completely standard for the era. Remember the story of the man who beat all 714 NES games in 3,435 hours? Crunching the numbers, you'll find that it took him a little less than 5 hours on average to beat each game individually, or roughly an afternoon's length. So what exactly is the problem with Mega Man being totally mundane in terms of how long it takes to beat it, relative to every other game on the NES?
Then there is a gameplay. Run, jump, stomp Goombas, rinse, repeat. Wow, such a variety, isn't it?
You can make anything sound tedious if you boil it down to that simplistic of a level, though. Earlier in this video, you said you like Mega Man 2.
Now, if you will excuse me, I gotta go play Mega Man 2, a game that actually deserves the praise.
But what do you do in that game? You walk, you jump, and you shoot at enemies. Later on in the video, you say you really like ice climbers.
Now, if you will excuse me, I have a date with the real classic, which is known as Ice Climber.
But what do you do in that game? You run, you jump, and you use your hammer. And to be clear, I'm not disparaging either of those games. But I am saying you can reduce any game down to such a basic level like you're doing with the original Super Mario Bros. And make it sound incredibly uninteresting. And side note, you complain about the lack of variety in Super Mario Bros. And then later on in this same video, you say there's too much variety in Battletoads.
A level variety is all over the place. While the graphics impress, the gameplay itself feels like a hodgepodge of mini-games loosely stitched together. You will go from a beat-em-up section to the frustrating bike racing with a wonky physics.
So do you want games with variety or not? Make up your mind. And these two sections, by the way, were completely back to back, making the contradiction even more noticeable.
And don't even get me started on the controls. Mario handles like a drunken shopping cart on the ice. 1 minute you are heroically leaping a pit, and next you are plummeting to your doom because a raw Koopa Troopa decided to play chicken with your ankles.
Wouldn't that be an issue with the enemy layout and not the controls? This point is structured kind of weird.
Don't even get me started on the Tanuki suit. Are you telling me that Leaf turns into a raccoon dog monstrosity that can fly? Did Miyamoto take a nap and dream this up after a bad bowl of sushi?
No, he was paying homage to a Japanese mythological creature, specifically the Bake Tanuki, I believe is how it's pronounced. A raccoon dog, or tanuki, who can use leaves to shapeshift. Anyway, final thoughts. Although this list isn't terrible, it doesn't really do a good job discussing the games it aims to talk about, and several of the complaints are utterly nonsensical. Good night, and good luck.